each side to take that rounded shape. After you do that, backing boards are placed on each side of it, and it's just wedge-shaped boards. And what you do, you clamp it into the press, and with that hammer, you're just taking those folds that you've rounded, and what you're doing is taking that hammer and just causing those folds just to go down over the board. And what it does is it creates a little shoulder. Creates a little shoulder there. And what that is, everybody's like, well, you do that just so you got a place for the boards to go. Well, it is that, but what that space is on each side is nothing more than the space that the thread took up in the book. So what you've done is you've distributed that space out towards the side. It's kind of wacky to think about it, but so after you get the book rounded and back, the next step is going to be to attach the boards. You're simply just taking if you were here about an hour ago, you would have seen it happen to that large monstrosity over there. What you do is you kind of take these, when you disconnect it here, just leave enough cord on each side, and then with a, I don't know if he still has one over here. Yeah. So you take, does anybody know what this is called? A knife, yeah. It's a cobbler's knife, but yeah, sure. We just steal other tradespeople's tools. Most things aren't bookbinder, bookbinder presses and things like that. But so if you take the cords and you untwist them, and then with a blade you take and you just kind of do this. See how I'm just removing that toe off of it. And what I'm doing is I want to taper it down really thin here, not as much here. So where once I get it tapered, I can take flour and water paste and take that and twist it back up. So with it tapered, you can see it looks more like I know everybody standing here can't see it, but it looks kind of like a needle or like a cowlick or something like that. And then take the boards, and with a bodkin or an awl, you just punch some holes through the board to cause the board to open up, and then you take those cords and you run it in and back up, and then you just take it and you hit it with a hammer, and it causes the board to clinch up around the boards. Does anybody know this fellow out here on
the ghost?
If you want to, I'll open this window right here, and we can all go through the window and then come back around if you want. He'd probably be like, really? So once the boards are attached, well, what you have to do is, well, if you remember at stage one, we folded pages. So what happens when you take a sheet of paper and you put more than one fold in it? What's problematic about that as far as the paper goes? If you put folds into it, what does it not allow you to do with the paper?
Open it up.
Open it up, yeah. So you can see this one has been trimmed, but the boards are attached. So now we would have to, let's see if I have one here. I think this one. Yeah, they've trimmed them all. But what would happen is, with the boards already attached, now you want to trim the page edges to get it to where you can open the book. And the tool that we're using is going to be this press and plow. So you clamp the book down with the boards on it. But what you want to do is you take that board and you just rock it down, and you use that as a straight edge, and then this gets clamped into the jaws of the press. It'll be in the center, and then whatever you leave above that press, blade goes into the plow, goes here, and what it does is, as you're pushing this back and forth, you're slowly just advancing that blade, and what it's doing is it's just going to start taking that off. So once you trim the top off of it, take it out. You don't want to do that for the foredge yet, because remember, you have this curve in here. Trim the bottom. Well, the thing about it is, we still need to trim that foredge, but we rounded it and it caused it to do this. Well, we still want that to be there. makes it easier to open the book. So what we have to do is, if you want to do it in this order, you have to temporarily push that round back out of the spine. And the way you do that is you take and use these trindles. They're little keys that go on both sides of the thing when you clamp it down into here. Now, when I said back at stage 4, that's where the order of operations changes, because today what I do is I'll trim it as soon as it comes off the frame, because I don't feel like going through all that rigmarole to try to get it flat again, and then when I cut it and then take it out of the trindles and then get it to come back. So by that point, you're now by the time you trim it, you're now at about stage, I hope I haven't totally killed you yet, but you're at stage about 12 or so. After the book is trimmed, we were talking about that edging, whether it's watercolor on the page edges or gold. I will say this: after about 1650, bookbinders are not responsible for gilt edging of paper. The guilds in Europe consider it to be another tradesperson job. So what they do is they say you're not responsible for it. Does that mean bookbinders still don't do it? They still do it, but you're not going to see a lot of that being done here. But put whatever edging that you want on it. Then the next thing is going to be what's known as a headband and a tailband, and that's just kind of some reinforcement here on the top of the book and the bottom of the book, because after all, when you go to remove a book off of a shelf, you just kind of grab it here, you tilt it back, you get a hold of it, and then you just kind of drag it. So what you're doing is you're putting pressure here, but you're also putting pressure there. So if you have that little reinforcement of cord there with thread going around it, it tends to extend the life of the leather on the outside of the book, unlike that one right there. But once the headband and the tailband sewn, now you're at a point to where you're going to think about what you want to put on the outside of the book, whether it's fully bound, completely covered in leather, maybe quarter bound, just leather on the spine and then finished off with paper, or half binding, which is this one right here. Leather on the spine, leather on the corners, and then a little bit later, a half binding can also be leather on the spine and then leather on the foredge on both sides. So if you're going with let's say you're going with a full binding, cut you out a piece of leather, and now you've graduated to stage 19. Then you have to pare the leather, thin it down. So with a series of paring knives, you can see that I've taken just a little bit of the leather off the book. So an edge knife or an English knife, what you're trying to do is take this blade, and whatever you do, don't try this at home in the dark. But you can see I can just take that blade at a very shallow angle, and what I'm doing is I'm just paring that or thinning it, tapering it back. That's around the edge where the leather gets turned in on the book. And then you would also need to thin the leather down where the spine of the book is going to be. So using the French knife, which does more of a shaving motion, you can see. And I hope I didn't. Okay, good. I'm going to go ahead and stop here because I really don't want to put a hole in the leather that's hundreds of dollars. Because this one little small piece of skin came from a skin that looks about this size here. So does anybody want to take a crack at what animal this came from? Beaver. Everybody says beaver. First of all, I've never seen a burgundy colored beaver, but anyway. Anybody? No, you're wrong. Not to say you couldn't use beaver leather for a book, but I'll give you a hint. On this side of the Atlantic, you might have one on your farm, and you get milk from it. Nah, that's not a pig. Who said goat? Raise your hand. Take a bow. You're good. That's what it is. This is known as a Moroccan goat, or a Levant goat, Levant skin, turkey skin. Not because it's made out of turkey, but it comes from regions in the world. It comes from the Ottoman Empire. places like that. So that one skin right there, even today, is somewhere between $350 and $400 just for that one skin. So I'm using it. I'm using it very sparingly on books. But calf skin is what you tend to see being used for more books like that, just because calf skin is kind of middle of the road. This is the expensive stuff, but look, it lasts 800 to 1,000 years before you have to have work done onto it. Yeah. So this one right here, he's got a little bit of. See, he's got a two-tone book. He's got not only that green Moroccan on there, but see, because I did this book, by the way. He's got that brown leather on it. So turned out pretty good, Eric. So, but I didn't put his name on it. But the cheapest leather. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank you.
Go find your guy that was peering in the window. But anyway.
Want you.
But the cheapest leather is going to be sheepskin.
Right. You're doing. Do y'all know that?
So once the leather's paired,
Yeah.